Picture yourself in a dimly lit tavern, the air thick with the scent of stale ale and smoky hearth. It's the Middle Ages, and no, it's not the Hollywood version, with gallant knights and gleaming castles. This is the real deal, mud-caked boots, flea-ridden cloaks, and a world where the local entertainment might be a bard butchering a lute, or a neighbour dancing till he drops, possibly from something nastier than exhaustion. Welcome to the foggy, fragrant world of medieval intoxication, where regular gritty, stubborn people, found ways to escape the grind of their days. They didn't have your streaming apps or espresso shots, but they had herbs' roots, and a reckless curiosity that sometimes turned a bad idea into a wild night. So dim the lights, maybe crack a window for that soft evening breeze, and let's dive into a time when Let's See What This Does was both a plan and a prayer. You might imagine the Middle Ages as a grim slog of plagues, prayers and potatoes, but beneath the woolen tunics and endless winters, folks were experimenting. Not with test tubes, mind you, but with whatever grew in the garden or festered in the pantry. A peasant bone-tired from ploughing fields might eyeball a gnarled root and think, what if I boil this with some ale? A monk bored out of his skull in a chilly scriptorium might wonder if that weird mushroom could spice up his vespers. Life was tough, no electricity, no painkillers, and the closest thing to a movie night was watching a goose chaser drunk through the village square. So when someone whispered about a plant that could make you forget the tax collector for a few hours, you'd probably give it a chew. And trust me, things got weird, sometimes poetic, sometimes catastrophic, but always human. Hit that like button if you're ready for the ride and drop a comment with where you're tuning in from. Let's see how far this medieval haze drifts tonight. Now that you're settled in, let's peel back the layers of this medieval world where getting a buzz wasn't just a Friday night whim, it was woven into the very fabric of life. Forget the modern idea of partying. In the Middle Ages, mind-altering substances weren't about sneaking a joint behind the barn. They were medicine ritual, and sometimes just a bad batch of bread that sent the whole village into a spin. Picture yourself as a medieval villager, your knees creaking like a rusty gate, your only doctor, a barber with a dull knife. A healer hands you a bitter tea that smells like regret, promising it'll ease your toothache. You drink it, and suddenly the room's spinning and you're arguing with a stool you swear is your cousin. That's the medieval high equal parts cure prayer and chaos. These substances weren't fringe, they were mainstream, tucked into every corner of society. Physicians prescribed them, monks grew them in cloistered gardens, and midwives swore by them to dull the screams of childbirth. Even the church, ever suspicious of anything too fun, couldn't deny their power. A visionary state might get you saint status if you played it right, but call it getting lit and you'd be dodging pitchforks. The line between divine inspiration and delirium was razor thin, and it depended on who was watching. Peasants didn't have the luxury of labels, they used what worked, whether it was a tankard of herb-laced ale to numb the cold, or a salve that made them dream of flying. And when mouldy rye turned your morning porridge into a ticket to Wonderland, you didn't complain. You just hoped the visions were kind. This was a world where survival demanded creativity, and every sip or sniff was a roll of the dice. Stay with me next, we'll dig into the plants that made it all happen. Imagine you're hunched over a flickering fire in a medieval hut, the wind howling outside like a pack of hungry wolves. Your tooth's throbbing, worse than a blacksmith's hammer, and the local healer, a wiry woman with eyes like a hawk, hands you a steaming cup of something that smells like damp earth and bad decisions. Henbane, she mutters. It'll quiet the pain. You take a sip, and for a moment the world softens, your aches fading into a warm haze. But then your mouth goes dry as a desert, the walls start whispering, and you're pretty sure the cat just asked you to dance. Welcome to Henbane, the Middle Ages answer to spin the wheel and see what happens. This plant was no casual herb. It was a gamble, a roll of nature's dice that could soothe your soul or send you sprinting through the woods shouting at trees. Henbane, or Hyoscyamus niger, to the scholarly types, was a medieval multi-tool used by everyone from monks to midwives. In small doses it was a godsend, a sedative for sleepless nights, a painkiller for childbirth, or a balm for that toothache that made you curse the saints. But cross the line into a heftier dose and you're in for a wild ride, hallucinations, delirium, and maybe a heartfelt chat with a turnip you're convinced is your long-lost aunt. Its active compounds, scopolamine and hyoscyamin, scrambled your brain's wiring, turning reality into a fever dream of distorted shapes and spontaneous jigs. Smoked, brewed, or slathered on as a greasy salve, henbane was a staple in the healer's kit, though the church raised an eyebrow at anything that made you see angels without their approval. Legal. Sure, but suspicious visions were meant to come from prayer, not plants. Still, for a peasant with nothing but grit and a sore back henbane, was a risky but tempting escape. If you're enjoying this herbal haze, drop a comment with what time it is where you are. Let's see who's up for the night shift. Step into a medieval forest at dusk, the air heavy with the scent of moss and mystery. You're a herbalist cloak damp from the evening mist eyeing a patch of earth where a mandrake root lies buried. It's no ordinary plant, its gnarled human-shaped form has a reputation that could make a knight quiver. Legend says it screams when you yank it from the ground, a wail so piercing it could drop you dead. So you tie a rope to it, loop the other end around a scruffy dog and whistle from a safe distance. The dog tugs the root pops free and you wince, half expecting the apocalypse. Nothing happens, the dog's fine, but your heart's pounding like a war drum. That's mandrake, the Middle Ages' most theatrical herb, equal parts medicine, magic and madness. Mandrake or Mandragora officinarum was the rock star of medieval botany steeped in folklore and fear. Its eerie humanoid roots were believed to hold potent powers, a sedative for surgeries, an aphrodisiac for lonely hearts, or a ticket to prophetic dreams if you boiled it in wine. Inhale its fumes and you might see visions of glory or wake up in a ditch muttering about goats. Herbalists swore by its ability to dull pain but overdose, and you'd be vomiting, fainting, or convincing your neighbours the soup was possessed. Harvesting was a ritual in itself, with tales of dogs sacrificed to its deadly cry, though most just dug it up and hoped for the best. The church wasn't thrilled anything that sparked visions without a priest's blessing smelled like witchcraft. Yet monks scribbled mandrake recipes in their herbals, detailing doses with a precision that suggests someone had a very interesting night. For the desperate or daring mandrake was a gamble worth taking a root that promised miracles and delivered chaos. Stick around next, we'll uncover more of nature's wild tricks. Picture yourself at a medieval feast, the hall alive with the clatter of goblets and the flicker of torchlight. You're a noblewoman, your linen gown heavy with embroidery, but all eyes are on your face, or rather your eyes. They're wide, dark, almost otherworldly, thanks to a tiny drop of belladonna slipped into them before you left your chamber. The name means beautiful lady, and it's no lie those dilated pupils make you look like a saint or a sorceress mysterious enough to turn heads. But as the room spins slightly and the candlelight stabs at your vision, you're reminded that beauty comes at a cost. Belladonna or deadly nightshade is as treacherous as it is alluring, a plant that could make you a vision, or send you screaming into a hallucination where the walls recite Latin. Belladonna, known to the learned as Atropa belladonna, was the medieval world's double-edged sword. A pinch in your eyes for that captivating gaze, a dose in a potion to dull the agony of a broken bone or a reckless gulp that might have you chasing phantom saints through the village. Its compounds atropine and scopolamine toyed with your nervous system, blurring the line between medicine and madness. Physicians used it sparingly to ease pain or induce a death-like sleep for surgeries, but one wrong move and you'd be seeing devils in your stew or waking up with no memory of why you're holding a spoon. Nobles and apothecaries alike handled it with care or not, depending on how bad the plague was that week. The church cast a wary eye. Anything that made you see visions without a prayer was trouble. Yet belladonna's allure was undeniable, a poison that promised beauty and relief delivered with a smirk and a warning. If you're hooked on this herbal chaos, drop a comment with where you're tuning in. Let's see who's braving the night with us. Step into a medieval apothecary's den where the air hums with the scent of crushed herbs and something faintly sinister. Jars line the shelves filled with roots and resins, but your gaze lands on a greasy pot of salve, its surface shimmering under the candlelight. This is no ordinary ointment. It's a flying ointment, a witch's brew of henbane, mandrake and belladonna mixed with pig fat and whispered charms. Smear it on your skin, maybe somewhere the sun doesn't shine, and you're promised to ride through the night sky soaring with spirits or demons, depending on who's telling the tale. But as the room tilts and your heart races, you might wonder if you're flying or just losing your grip on reality. In the Middle Ages, these concoctions were more than folklore, they were a risky ticket to transcendence or trouble. These ointments and potions weren't for casual thrills. They were tied to rituals, healing, and the kind of spiritual quest that made priests nervous. Applied to sensitive skin, yes, those delicate spots flying ointments sent their potent herbs straight to your bloodstream, sparking visions of soaring over villages or feasting with shadowy figures. Potions, meanwhile, were gulped down in wine or broth like poppy-laced mead that could numb a wound or land you in a divine chat with a talking cloud. Apothecaries and wise women crafted these with care, blending fact with faith, but a sloppy dose could leave you babbling about lizards or waking up in a haystack with no shoes. The church called it witchcraft, but for many it was just medicine with a side of mystery. These were the tools of the desperate, the devout, or the downright curious, offering a glimpse of the beyond if you could survive the trip. Stay with me. Next we'll cross continents to explore a different kind of high. Transport yourself to a bustling market in 9th century Baghdad, where the air hums with the chatter of merchants and the scent of saffron and honey. Amid the stalls, a Sufi mystic slips you a sticky spiced sweet, his eyes twinkling with secrets. "Hashish," he whispers, promising it'll quiet your mind and open your soul to the divine. Unlike the bitter brews of medieval Europe, this cannabis resin treat tastes like a dessert you'd fight a camel for. In the Islamic Golden Age, hashish wasn't just a sneaky thrill, it was a tool for poets, healers and seekers chasing something bigger than themselves. While Europe was rubbing toxic salves and praying for mercy scholars, here we're jotting down its effects with the precision of a mathematician charting the stars. Hashish derived from cannabis resin was a star in Persia, Egypt, and the Levant often mixed with honey or spices to make it go down smooth. For Sufis, the mystics of Islam, it was a key to spiritual ecstasy, melting the ego and sparking long, soulful stares at the cosmos, or at least the nearest wall. Physicians prescribed it to calm nerves or ease pain, while poets spun verses about its dreamy haze, sounding like they'd just survived a bad breakup with the universe. But not everyone was a fan. Rulers tried to ban it, grumbling about lazy workers or giggling prayer sessions, though their crackdowns had about as much success as herding cats. Myths swirled too, like the hashish-fueled assassins, a tale more legend than ledger. For most, hashish was just part of life, a sweet escape from camel traffic or existential dread. If you're vibing with this drop, a comment with what time it's ticking where you are. Let's see who's riding this historical wave tonight. Step into a medieval chapel, the stone walls echoing with solemn chants, and the air thick with a swirling cloud of incense like God's own fog machine. The scent of frankincense and myrrh wraps around you heavy and sweet, masking the whiff of unwashed wool and yesterday's fish stew. It's not just about setting the mood. Those curling wisps of smoke were believed to carry prayers, skyward, purify the space, and maybe nudge you closer to the divine. But here's the twist that dreamy haze might have done more than soothe your soul. In the Middle Ages, incense wasn't just spiritual window dressing. It had a subtle kick, a whisper of psychoactive magic, that could make a 5-hour sermon feel like a gentle drift into eternity. Frankincense and myrrh, hauled from the deserts of Arabia and East Africa, were the rock stars of sacred smoke. Burned in churches, mosques and temples, they released compounds like incensyl acetate, which modern science says can tickle your brain's limbic system, calming nerves and softening reality's edges. In stuffy medieval chapels where fasting monks and weary villagers sat shoulder to shoulder, that smoky air could spark a mild buzz, nothing wild, just enough to make the Gregorian chant feel like a cosmic lullaby. Visions during prayers. Maybe divine, maybe just resin fumes. Clerics swore it lifted the soul. Skeptics might say it just made boredom bearable. Either way, incense was a universal vibe crossing faiths and borders from Christian altars to pagan groves. It was the medieval equivalent of a scented candle and lo-fi beats, only with more Latin and a hint of transcendence. Stick around next, we'll raise a tankard to the liquid courage of the age. Imagine stumbling into a medieval village at dusk, the air sharp with the tang of wood smoke and the faint sweetness of fermenting barley. You duck into a tavern where the clink of tankards and the roar of laughter drown out the creak of your aching joints. Water's a gamble here. Streams are often the local latrine for cows, and worse, so you reach for a mug of small beer brewed by someone's aunt, who measures with a squint and a prayer. It's weak, barely alcoholic, but it's safer than the river and gives you a gentle buzz like a hug from a slightly tipsy friend. In the Middle Ages, alcohol wasn't just a drink, it was survival, a social glue, and sometimes the only thing keeping you sane when your neighbour's chicken starts judging your life choices. From peasants to monks, everyone drank, kids included. Small beer was the Gatorade of the era, sipped all day to stay hydrated without risking dysentery. But don't picture a sober scene. Wealthier folks chase stronger ales, honeyed mead or wine spiked with herbs for that extra kick. Monasteries turned brewing into a holy art, with monks perfecting recipes like they were saving souls 1 pint at a time, feeling blue spiced wine, tooth extraction, a hefty gulp of ale, sharing gossip in a crowded-in mead and maybe a dance move nobody asked for. Taverns were therapy hubs where you'd drown your sorrows, celebrate a harvest, or invent a jig that'd get you banned from the village. Alcohol was more than a beverage. It was medicine, merriment, and a way to forget the draughty hovel you called home. If you're toasting this tale, drop a comment with where you're sipping from tonight. Let's raise a glass across time. Picture yourself at a medieval baker's table, the air thick with the dusty scent of rye flour. You grab a warm loaf, not knowing it's laced with ergot, a sneaky fungus that looks like a harmless black kernel, but hits like a curse from a fairy tale. One bite, and suddenly your hands feel like they're crawling with spiders, the room spins, and you're laughing or screaming at a shadow you swear is your grandma. Or maybe you're in a mountain village near the Black Sea, spreading honey on your bread, unaware that the bees got frisky with toxic rhododendron flowers. That's mad honey, and it's about to turn your breakfast into a slow-motion opera starring your own eyebrows. In the Middle Ages, these accidental highs weren't choices, they were nature's prank on the hungry and the hopeful. Ergot, a parasite on rye, was the medieval world's uninvited party guest, sparking convulsions, hallucinations, and even dancing plagues, where entire towns jigged until they dropped. It was like LSD before anyone knew what chemistry was, baked right into your daily bread because hunger didn't care about quality control. Mad honey, meanwhile, was a rare treat from Anatolia's hills, where bees turned nectar into a dizzying potion. A dab could ease a headache. A spoonful and you're clutching a potato convinced it's your uncle. Armies even used it as a weapon, leaving jars for invaders to find, only to watch them collapse in a giggling heap. Both were wild cards that got a village-wide fever dream. Mad honey, a mystic's gamble. They showed how even breakfast could be a roll of the dice in a world where survival was never guaranteed. That's the end of our medieval haze. Next we'll sail into the ancient seas. Drop a comment with what time it is where you are. Let's see who's still awake for the journey. Feel the Mediterranean breeze whip across your face, the wooden deck creaking underfoot as waves slap the hull. You're not just on a ship, you're riding the lifeblood of ancient empires where the sea was no mere backdrop, but the stage for history's grandest dramas. This isn't about dusty trails or trudging legions. It's about the shimmering expanse that carried grain from Egypt, gold from Carthage, and whispers of war from Athens to Rome. To command the seas was to clutch the world's pulse, steering trade power and survival itself. So dim, the lights let a fan's hum mimic the ocean's sigh and sail with me into a time when empires rose and fell with the tide. The Mediterranean, the Middle Sea, was a liquid crossroads stitching together Europe, Africa and Asia. It ferried Phoenician merchants, Roman soldiers and Egyptian priests, linking cultures in a web of commerce and conquest. Control it, and you could starve a rival city, flood their markets with your goods, or land an army on their doorstep before they could blink. Athens leaned on its fleet to secure grain routes and squeeze tribute from allies. Carthage turned the sea into a glittering trade highway, their ships heavy with Spanish silver and Sicilian wine. Egypt's Nile-fed vessels guarded incense trails to distant Punt. Harbours were the era's power hubs, buzzing with shipwrights and dealmakers, while navies were the muscle that kept it all flowing. A single storm or a bold admiral could flip the board, making the sea both a treasure and a trap. If you're hooked, drop a comment with where you're anchored at 4:47 p.m. +07 this Saturday, June 20th, 2025. Let's see who's sailing this ancient current. Now squeeze onto a trireme's narrow deck, packed tight with rowers, whose grunts match the drum's relentless beat. You're not on some leisurely cruise. This is a trireme, the ancient world's sleekest war machine, skimming the waves like a predator stalking prey. The Athenians made it their own, turning these lean ships into the fists of their sea empire. With 3 tiers of oars flashing like a centipede's legs, a trireme could hit 9 knots fast enough to chase down a merchant or smash an enemy's hull to kindling. It's less a ship, more a living weapon powered by sweat and strategy. Settle in, let a fan's hum echo the sea's rhythm, and let's row into the heart of ancient naval might. A trireme was a marvel, 120 feet of cedar, just 18 feet wide, built to slice through water with barely a ripple. Its 3 rows of oars, manned by citizen rowers, not chained captives, moved like a single heartbeat, driving it into battle with lethal grace. The star was the ram, a bronze-sheathed prow that could gut an enemy ship if you hit just right. Timing was everything. Misjudge the angle and you'd be stuck or capsized. Athenian captains honed tricks like the diek darting through enemy lines to strike from behind. A handful of marines' hoplites with spears and nerve clung to the deck, ready to board or fend off attackers. No heavy armour, no bulk. The trireme's power was speed and precision, a dancer in a world of brutes. It wasn't just Athens' navy, it was their democracy afloat, rowed by commoners who turned grit into glory. Stick with me. Next we'll dive into the bloody dance of battle. Drop a comment with where you're at, let's see who's rowing at this hour. Grip the rail of a trireme, the sea heaving beneath you, the air thick with the tang of salt and the shouts of rowers straining as one. You're in the chaos of an ancient naval battle, where the Mediterranean sun glints off bronze rams and splintered oars. This isn't a brawl, it's a deadly chess match played at full sprint with everything on the line. Your mission: sink the enemy's ship with a well-aimed ram or swarm their deck, and fight like your life depends on it, because it does. The Athenians were the masters of this brutal dance, weaving their triremes through enemy lines, with a finesse that turned tides and toppled empires. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the wave's pulse, and let's plunge into the heart of ancient naval warfare's tactics. Ramming was the trireme's killer move, a precision strike to puncture an enemy's hull below the waterline. Get it right, and their ship's sinking in minutes. Get it wrong, and you're either glancing off or stuck a sitting duck for counterattack. Athenian captains wielded manoeuvres like the deck slipping through gaps to ram vulnerable flanks, or the periplus circling to hit from behind. Both demanded rowers who could pivot faster than a politician's promise. But when rams missed or oars tangled, boarding turned the sea into a butcher's yard. Marines' hoplites with spears and raw nerve leaped onto enemy decks, slashing in a frenzy of close-quarters combat. Archers peppered the chaos with arrows, picking off anyone dumb enough to stand tall. The Romans later tilted the scales with the corvus, a spiked plank that locked ships together, letting their legions turn naval fights into land-style bloodbaths. Every clash was a high-stakes gamble where one misstep sent you to the deep. If you're hooked on this carnage, drop a comment with where you're at. 04:48 p.m. Blunzer 07, Saturday, June 23rd, 2025. Who's riding this wave? Imagine a wall of flame roaring across the water, a ship ablaze and hurtling toward your fleet like a vengeful god's torch. The stench of burning pitch stings your nose and panic ripples through the ranks as sailors scramble to cut ropes and flee. In ancient naval warfare, fire was the wild card, a weapon so raw it could unravel the tightest formation. Fire ships weren't everyday tools, they were desperate, devastating, and as dangerous to the sender as the target. Picture a vessel packed with oil tar and sulphur lit up, and loosed into a crowded harbour, its flames licking at sails and devouring hope. Settle in, let a fan's hum carry the sea's restless hum, and let's sail into the fiery terror that turned battles into infernos. Fire ships were the last resort of cornered fleets used in blockades or do-or-die stands where survival hung by a thread. You'd stuff a boat with anything that burned, set it alight, and pray the wind didn't betray you. In the Greco-Persian Wars, defenders flung flaming rafts at invaders, banking on panic to shatter their lines in tight straits. The fear was primal, ramming could be parried, boarding repelled. But fire didn't care about your courage. It ate wood flesh and morale-driving crews to abandon ship at the first whiff of smoke. Egyptians and Phoenicians hurled fire pots or flaming arrows to guard their ports, turning attackers into blazing targets. By Byzantine times, Greek fire, a liquid flame that laughed at water, up the stakes, but its roots lay in these early blazes. Fire wasn't just a tactic. It was chaos, a reminder the sea could burn as fiercely as the men who fought it. Stick with me next, we'll chart Athens' rise to glory. Drop a comment with your time zone. Let's see who's braving this heat at 04:48 p.m. Plundos 07. Picture yourself in Athens, 5th century BCE, standing on a rocky shore as a forest of triremes bobs in the harbour, their oars gleaming like spears under the sun. This isn't just a city, it's a naval juggernaut born from a silver windfall and a visionary named Themistocles. When a massive silver vein was struck in Laurium, he didn't squander it on trinkets. He poured it into building a fleet that would make Athens the Mediterranean's bully. With over 200 triremes, the city didn't just sail the seas, it ruled them, turning a landlocked polis into an empire that flexed its might from Egypt to the Black Sea. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum echo the slap of waves, and let's dive into the rise of Athens' naval supremacy. The turning point was Salamis in 480 BCE, where Themistocles' fleet lured the Persian armada into narrow straits and smashed them to splinters. It wasn't just a win, it was a masterclass in strategy, proving brains and boats could outmatch sheer numbers. Athens' navy became its lifeblood guarding grain routes, shaking down allies for tribute and crushing rebels with a flick of an oar. The Delian League, a so-called alliance, was Athens' protection racket, its ships ensuring loyalty while funding temples and theatres back home. But the real genius was the system the Theorica Fund kept the fleet afloat, and the rowers, poor citizens, not slaves, gave muscle to democracy itself. Every stroke was a vote, every victory a shout from the masses. Yet this power bred arrogance. Athens' heavy hand sparked resentment, sowing seeds for its own downfall in the Peloponnesian War. For now, though, the sea was theirs, and they rode it like gods. If you're caught in this tide, drop a comment with where you're at 04:48 PM plus 07, Saturday, June 21, 2025, who's sailing with Athens. Now shift your gaze to Carthage, a Phoenician jewel in modern-day Tunisia, where the sea wasn't just a highway, it was an empire's beating heart. By the 4th century, BCE Carthage wasn't just a city, it was a maritime titan, its circular harbour, a buzzing hive of warships and merchant vessels. Picture docks churning out Quinquerem's beefier cousins of the trireme on an assembly line that would make modern factories jealous. From Spain to Sicily, Carthaginian ships carried tin, silver and exotic goods, their navy ensuring no pirate or rival dared interrupt the flow. Settle in, let a fan's hum mimic the creak of rigging, and let's sail into the world of Carthage's sea-soaked dominance. Carthage's power wasn't just military muscle, it was trade navigation, and a knack for turning the Mediterranean into their personal marketplace. Their shipyards, marvels of engineering, could build or repair hundreds of vessels, crewed by Libyan mercenaries and Phoenician sailors who knew the sea like their own pulse. Unlike Athens' nimble triremes, Carthage favoured heavier ships built for ramming and boarding, backed by seasoned marines who fought like they were born on the waves. They ruled from Gibraltar to Sardinia, their wealth fueling a network that made them the envy of the ancient world. But then came Rome, a land-loving upstart that cracked the code by stealing a Carthaginian ship and building a navy overnight. In the Punic Wars, Carthage's brilliance shone. Think Trapani, where they outmanoeuvred Rome's fleet. But Rome's sheer grit and numbers eventually drowned them. Still, Carthage's legacy as master merchants and sea lords endures a testament to a city that made the waves its kingdom. Drop a comment with your time zone, let's see who's riding Carthage's wake at 04:48 PM plus 07. Stand on the banks of the Nile, the river's current glinting like molten gold under the Egyptian sun. You're not gazing at pyramids or pharaohs, but at a fleet of sleek vessels, their sails taut, ready to carry grain soldiers or sacred cargo. Egypt's naval power wasn't born on the open sea, but on this ancient highway, the Nile, which stitched the kingdom together from desert to delta. By the New Kingdom around 1550 BCE, Egypt's ships weren't just river runners, they were seagoing warriors fending off pirates and projecting power to distant shores. Forget the image of a landlocked empire. Egypt sailed its way to greatness, and the water was its lifeline. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the Nile's flow, and let's cruise into Egypt's aquatic might. The Nile was Egypt's spine, ferrying everything from colossal statues to Nubian gold. Early ships crafted from papyrus or imported cedar were nimble enough to navigate its currents. By the time of Thutmose III and Rameses III, Egypt's fleets had evolved, venturing into the Red Sea and Mediterranean to trade with Punt or battle the Sea People's raiders, who'd make any sailor sweat. These weren't Athens' zippy triremes, but broad sail-driven ships packed with archers and spearmen on raised platforms turning decks into floating fortresses. Reliefs at Medinet Habu show brutal clashes with Egyptian marines hacking through enemies in close combat. Ports like Byblos buzzed as trade hubs securing grain routes to the Levant and incense from afar. Egypt's navy wasn't about conquest, but survival, keeping the empire's veins open. Its legacy, a blueprint for riverine and coastal power that echoed through the ages. If you're hooked, drop a comment with where you're at. Joe 4:49 PM plus 07. Saturday, June 21st, 2025. Who's sailing the Nile, picture Rome in 264 BCE, a gritty city of legions and roads, staring across the sea at Carthage, the Mediterranean's naval kingpin. Rome's no sailor, its strength is in disciplined infantry, not creaking ships. But when the First Punic War kicks off, Rome pulls off a miracle. It builds a navy from scratch. turning farmers into oarsmen and carpenters into shipwrights. Legend says they nabbed a stranded Carthaginian quinquereme, reverse-engineered it, and churned out a fleet faster than you can say SPQR. With a secret weapon, the Corvus, a spiked boarding plank, Rome rewrote the rules of sea warfare, turning naval battles into the bloody brawls they knew best. Settle in, let a fan's hum echo the Tiber's ripple, and let's dive into Rome's meteoric rise to sea power. The Corvus was Rome's game-changer, a bridge that let legionaries storm enemy decks like they were sacking a city. At battles like melee Roman amateurs outfought Carthage's seasoned sailors, grappling ships and slashing through with gladius in hand. It wasn't elegant. Corvus-heavy ships were top-heavy, prone to tipping, but it was brutal and effective. By the Second Punic War, Rome's navy had grown up patrolling supply lines to Iberia and Africa, choking Hannibal's reinforcements. Under the Empire, fleets like the Classis Misnensis kept trade routes clear, and pirates at bay, ferrying troops from Britain to Judea. Rome never loved the sea like Carthage or Athens, but it mastered it with sheer will, turning the Mediterranean into Mare Nostrum, our sea. From landlubbers to lords of the waves, Rome's transformation was a masterclass in adaptation. Drop a comment with your time zone 04:49 PM +07 who's riding Rome's wake today. Stand at the edge of an ancient harbour, the Mediterranean stretching before you, like a liquid tapestry, its waves whispering tales of empires won and lost. The sea wasn't just a battlefield for Athens, Carthage, or Rome. It was a highway for ideas, goods, and cultures that shaped the world. Navies didn't just fight. They carried Greek art to Italy, Phoenician alphabets to distant shores, and Egyptian papyrus to scholars' desks. From triremes to fireships, the sea's mastery forged borders, economies and legacies that ripple through time. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the tide's rhythm, and let's sail into the enduring wake of ancient naval power. These fleets were more than war machines, they were empire builders. Athens' navy turned a city-state into a cultural beacon, its ships guarding poets and philosophers as fiercely as grain. Carthage's maritime web spun wealth from Spain to Sicily, making it a melting pot of Punic and Greek vibes. Rome's sea dominance glued its vast empire together, ferrying legions and laws from Britain to Babylon. The sea was a cultural conduit. Greek colonists spread their gods and plays, Phoenicians gifted their alphabet, and Egyptian ships hauled sacred knowledge alongside incense. Technologically, navies pushed boundaries. Triremes sparked shipbuilding revolutions, harbours like Alexandria became innovation hubs, and trade routes birthed markets that buzzed with silk spices and ideas. Psychologically, the sea taught mobility over muscle, a lesson echoed in modern strategy. Ancient navies didn't just win wars, they wove the world's first global network, proving the sea was history's stage, not just its backdrop. That's the end of our naval saga. Next, we'll trace a conqueror's rise. Drop a comment with where you're at. 4:50 PM +07, Saturday, June 24th, 2025. Who's still afloat? Step into the rugged hills of 6th century BCE Persia, where the air smells of dust and destiny. You're in Anshan, a modest vassal kingdom under Median rule, and a child is born who'll shake the world, Cyrus, soon to be called the Great. His story starts not with trumpets, but with a king's nightmare. Astyages, the Median ruler, dreams his grandson will topple him. Frightened, he marries his daughter Mandane to a Persian noble Cambyses, hoping to keep the bloodline tame. But when Cyrus arrives, Astyages orders him killed, handing the grim task to his servant Harpagus. Picture the tension, a loyal man tasked with murdering a baby only to defy fate by sparing him. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the desert wind, and let's unravel the myth that birthed an empire. Harpagus, unable to stomach the deed, passes baby Cyrus to a shepherd who raises him in secret among craggy peaks and bleating flocks. The boy grows with a spark that can't be hidden, leading other children, commanding respect with a glance, his charisma like a flame in the dark. Whispers reach the Median court, a noble child living as a peasant. Astyages investigates and the truth spills out. But instead of death, Cyrus is spared, sent back to his father in Persia, now a prince with a destiny too big for the mountains. Greek historian Herodotus spins this tale with flair, and whether it's fact or fable, it captures Cyrus's aura, a boy marked by fate dodging death to challenge kings. This isn't just a birth story. It's the seed of a legend who'd rewrite the ancient world with sword and mercy. If you're gripped by this epic, drop a comment with where you're at. 04:50 PM plus 07, Saturday, June 21st, 2025, who's chasing Cyrus's tail. Now picture yourself in a Persian camp, the air thick with the scent of campfires and the buzz of rebellion. It's 553 BCE, and Cyrus, no longer a hidden prince, is a leader with fire in his veins. The Median Empire, ruled by the aging Astyages, looms over Persia, but cracks are forming. Enter Harpagus, the man who once spared baby Cyrus, now nursing a grudge after Astyages served him a gruesome betrayal, his own son's death. Harpagus sends secret messages urging Cyrus to rise, promising allies within the Median ranks. This is no mere uprising. It's a spark that'll burn an empire to ash. Settle in, let a fan's hum echo the march of boots, and let's dive into the revolt that made Cyrus a conqueror. Over 3 grueling years, Cyrus's forces carved through Median territory, their swords backed by disaffected nobles, and Harpagus's betrayal. He's not just a warrior. He's a diplomat, sparing surrendered foes and earning whispers of respect. By 550 BCE, the final clash comes, and Astyages' army crumbles, betrayed from within. Cyrus marches into Ecbatana, the Median capital, not as a destroyer but a unifier. He keeps local traditions, absorbs Median officials, and lays the foundation for a new kind of empire, one built on mercy as much as might. This wasn't just a victory, it was a statement. Persia was free and Cyrus was no vassal. He was a king with the Iranian plateau now his. The world was watching and he was just getting started. Stick with me. Next we'll follow Cyrus to the glittering wealth of Lydia. Drop a comment with your time zone 04:50 PM plus 07. Who's riding with Persia's rising star. You're standing on the windswept plains near the Halys River 547 BCE, where the clash of spears and the thunder of hooves signal a showdown that'll reshape the ancient world. Cyrus, now master of Media, turns his gaze to Lydia, a kingdom dripping with wealth under King Croesus, a man so rich his name means money itself. Croesus, sensing Persia's rise, allies with Egypt and Babylon, and consults the Oracle of Delphi, who cryptically warns that crossing the river will destroy a great empire. Spoiler, it's his own. The armies meet in a brutal dance, but Cyrus doesn't stop there. In a daring winter campaign, he chases Croesus to his glittering capital Sardis. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the howl of the battlefield, and let's march into Cyrus's conquest of a legend. Croesus holds up in Sardis, thinking winter will save him, but Cyrus presses on his army relentless. Herodotus spins a wild tale of Cyrus using camels to spook Lydia's cavalry, scattering their prized horses. True or not, the siege is swift, Sardis falls in weeks. But here's where Cyrus shines. Instead of torching the city or executing Croesus, he spares him, even making him an advisor. The story goes that as Croesus faced a pyre, he invoked Solon's wisdom about fleeting fortune, and Cyrus moved, doused the flames. This mercy wasn't just kindness, it was strategy, winning hearts, and securing Lydia's vast treasury and Ionian trade routes. Cyrus's victory wasn't just a conquest, it was a masterclass in blending force with forgiveness, planting Persia's flag in the Greek world and setting the stage for greater triumphs. If you're caught in this epic, drop a comment with where you're at 04:54 PM plus 07, Saturday, June 21st, 2025, who's marching with Cyrus. Now picture yourself at the gates of Babylon 539 BCE, a city of towering ziggurats and walls so thick they laugh at armies. This is the jewel of the Near East, but its king Nabonidus is a ghost, unpopular, absent and out of touch, leaving his son Belshazzar to hold the throne. The people grumble, the priests of Marduk fume, and Cyrus smells opportunity. Unlike his bloody campaigns elsewhere, this conquest is surgical, almost silent. His forces crush Babylonian troops at Opis, but it's his propaganda that does the heavy lifting, painting him as a liberator chosen by Marduk himself. Settle in, let a fan's hum echo the Tigris's flow, and let's walk into the fall of a legend. Cyrus doesn't storm Babylon, he glides in. The city's gates swing open, maybe through betrayal, maybe through deals whispered in the shadows. No siege, no slaughter, just Cyrus marching as a saviour, not a conqueror. He honours the temples, joins their rituals, and issues the Cyrus cylinder, a clay tablet proclaiming peace, justice, and the restoration of displaced peoples. The Jews exiled for decades are free to return to Jerusalem, their temples rebuilding, greenlit by a Persian king. The Hebrew Bible calls him God's anointed, a rare honour for a foreigner. This wasn't just a takeover, It was a redefinition of empire built on respect rather than ruin. Babylon's fall cemented Cyrus as a ruler who didn't just conquer lands but won souls, setting a standard few could match. Stick with me next, we'll explore how he ruled it all. Drop a comment with your time zone 0454 PM +07. Who's with Cyrus in Babylon? Imagine ruling a patchwork empire stretching from the Aegean's azure shores to the dusty steppes of Central Asia. A mosaic of Persians, Medes, Babylonians, and countless others, each with their own gods' tongues and grudges. You're Cyrus, and your genius isn't just in conquering, it's in keeping this sprawl together without it fraying like a cheap cloak. By 539 BCE, after taking Babylon, you're not just a king, but a visionary crafting a new kind of rule where mercy and structure outshine fear. Your secret. Let people be themselves, but tie them to you with loyalty and order. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the caravan's creak, and let's step into the art of Cyrus's governance. Cyrus didn't crush his subjects into one mould, he let local customs, religions, and leaders thrive under his watchful eye. In Babylon he restored temples, in Judea he freed exiles to rebuild theirs. His satrapy system was a master-stroke provincial governors, often local elites handled taxes and law, but answered to him, blending freedom with control. He built roads, safeguarded trade, and ensured merchants could cross his empire without a bandit's blade at their throat. Every conquered city saw his respect, rituals honoured traditions untouched, turning foes into allies. The Cyrus cylinder etched with his promise of justice wasn't just propaganda, it was a blueprint for stability. Rebellion's rare, because who rebels against a king who lets you pray your way? Even Greeks snooty about barbarians admired him with Xenophon, penning a glowing biography. Cyrus ruled not by terror but by trust, a rare alchemy that made his empire hum. If you're hooked, drop a comment with where you're at 0455 PM +07. Saturday, June 20th, 2025, who's ruling with Cyrus. Now picture the windswept steppes east of the Caspian Sea, 530 BCE, where the horizon stretches endless, and the air carries the scent of horsesweat and danger. You're with Cyrus, a king at the peak of his power, but ambition drives him to one last frontier, the Massagete fierce nomads led by Queen Tamiris, a warrior as unyielding as the land she rules. These horse-riding tribes are no pushovers, their bows and bravado a threat to Persia's borders. Cyrus, ever the strategist, tries diplomacy, first proposing marriage to Tamiris, a political ploy she sees right through. When words fail, he turns to war, but this campaign will be his last. Settle in, let a fan's hum echo the steppes wail, and let's ride into Cyrus's final chapter. Herodotus tells a dramatic tale. Cyrus lures the Massagete with a banquet of wine, a drink they're unused to, then ambushes their drunken warriors, capturing Tamiris' son. Enraged, she vows vengeance, and in the climactic clash, her forces overwhelm the Persians. Cyrus falls, struck down in battle, his body claimed by the steppe. Herodotus claims Tamiris in fury dunked his head in a blood-filled sack, snarling, "Drink your fill." Myth or not, the truth is stark. Cyrus died far from his palaces, his body returned to Pasargadae for burial in a simple tomb that still stands. His son Cambyses Teku took the throne, but Cyrus's unique blend of conquest and compassion was irreplaceable. His death didn't dim his legend, it sealed it a king who built an empire and died chasing its edges. Stick with me next, we'll trace his enduring legacy. Drop a comment with your time zone 0455 PM +07, who's mourning Cyrus's fall. Picture yourself in the heart of Pasargadae, where Cyrus the Great's modest tomb stands against a backdrop of sprawling empire from the Aegean's glimmer to the Indus's dust. By 530 BCE, Cyrus has left behind not just the largest empire the world has seen, but a blueprint for ruling it. His death doesn't unravel his creation. It passes to his son Cambyses II, and later Darius the Great, who polish his vision into a machine of governance that hums for centuries. This isn't just about conquest, it's about a system that wove Persians, Babylonians, and Greeks into a tapestry of stability. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the creak of caravans, and let's explore the enduring machinery of the Achaemenid Empire. Cyrus's satrapy system was his masterstroke. Governors, often local elites, ruled provinces from Egypt to Bactria, collecting taxes and keeping peace, while swearing loyalty to the king. Temples stood untouched, gods were honoured, and trade flowed along roads. Cyrus secured linking merchants from Ionia to India. His successors formalised this, building royal highways and a postal system that made the empire's vastness feel small. Rebellions were rare, not from fear, but because Cyrus's tolerance made loyalty easier than revolt. Babylonian ziggurats, Egyptian sanctuaries, Jewish temples all thrived under Persian oversight. Darius built on this, standardizing coins and laws, but it was Cyrus's spirit of inclusion that set the tone. Even when the empire fell to Alexander, its structure lingered, shaping governance for ages. The Achaemenids didn't just rule, they showed power could bend without breaking. If you're caught in this legacy, drop a comment with where you're at 4:56 p.m. +07, Saturday, June 24th, 2025. Who's marvelling at Cyrus's empire? Now stand in the shadow of history where Cyrus the Great's name echoes across centuries from ancient Judea to modern halls. He wasn't just a conqueror. He was a figure who bent the arc of time, revered by foes and friends alike. The Hebrew Bible calls him God's anointed for freeing the Jews to rebuild their temple. Greeks, ever sceptical of barbarians, hailed him as a model king through Xenophon's Cyropaedia. Even today his Cyrus cylinder sits at the United Nations, a symbol of tolerance that feels almost modern. His legacy isn't just land or laws, it's a story of power wielded with humanity. Settle in, let a fan's hum echo the whispers of history, and let's trace Cyrus's enduring reverence. In Judea, Cyrus's edict to restore Jerusalem's temple earned him a rare title, Messiah, a non-Jew anointed by God. Greek writer Xenophon spun his life into a manual for leadership, blending fact with awe, shaping Hellenistic and Roman ideals. Islamic tradition links him to Dul-Qarnayn, a righteous king of legend guarding justice with a great wall. Modern leaders, from Jefferson clutching Xenophon's words to Iran's Shah, invoking Cyrus's unity, saw in him a mirror for their own dreams. The Cyrus cylinder, with its call for peace and freedom, is no dusty relic, it's a manifesto of governance through respect, not fear. Cyrus didn't just build an empire, he built a myth that outlived stone and sword, proving a king could conquer hearts as fiercely as lands. That's the end of Cyrus's saga. Next, we'll unravel the power of ancient hairstyles. Drop a comment with your time zone, or 4:56 p.m. +07, who's still with Cyrus's legend. Step into the scorching Nile Valley, where the sun beats down like a relentless drum and the air shimmers with heat. You're in ancient Egypt, and the elite don't just endure the blaze, they turn it into a stage. Shaved heads gleam under the sky, not for comfort alone, but as a canvas for wigs that scream status, power, and purity. These aren't mere hairpieces. They're crowns of identity woven from human hair, horsehair, or plant fibres adorned with gold beads and perfumed wax that melts into a fragrant halo. From nobles to priests, wigs were Egypt's badge of divinity, worn in life and death to mark you as more than mortal. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the Nile's breeze, and let's unravel the art of Egyptian wigs. For the wealthy wigs were a flex, layered, braided, glittering with jewels. They shouted rank louder than any sceptre. Women's wigs, heavy with floral bands or metal clasps, signalled fertility and grace. A priestess's tight rose echoed the god's order. Men, especially those near the pharaoh, wore thick, stylized wigs to flaunt their divine proximity. Kids rocked the side lock of youth, a single braid dangling from a shaved scalp, snipped in rituals to mark adulthood. Priests went bald for purity, but donned ceremonial wigs to channel sacred roles. Even mummies got wigs, ensuring their status carried into the afterlife. Hair wasn't vanity, it was eternity, a declaration of who you were and who you'd be forever. If you're vibing with this ancient swagger, drop a comment with where you're at. 04:56 p.m. +07, Saturday, June 24th, 2025, who's rocking an Egyptian vibe. Now picture yourself on a windswept fjord where Viking longships slice through icy waves and warriors prep for battle under a sky like hammered steel. You're eyeing their hair-wild beards, tight braids, half-shaved skulls, not just a style, but a war cry woven into every strand. In Norse society, hair wasn't a whim. It was a billboard of honour, loyalty, and raw intimidation. Men and women alike treated their locks like weapons, signalling clan ties, strength, and a readiness to throw down. Forget Hollywood's scruffy clichés. Viking hair was meticulous, a craft that turned heads and froze hearts. Settle in, let a fan's hum echo the sea's roar, And let's dive into the power of Norse hairstyles. Men grew their hair long, braiding it into tight knots, or shaving sides for a look that screamed, "I'm here to fight." A warrior's beard, thick and plaited, wasn't just rugged, it was a badge of masculinity, keeping hair clear in the chaos of battle, while daring foes to test him. Women's hair, long and intricately braided with ribbons or beads, marked status and femininity. Married women wrapped theirs to signal commitment like a ring forged in strands. Combs and pins found in graves show daily care was no joke. Vikings groomed like their lives depended on it. Cut someone's hair without consent, that was a legal insult sparking feuds or worse, because hair was honour itself. Even gods like Thor with his fiery beard or Sif with her golden locks wore hair as divine currency. Hair was a Viking story told in every braid and snip. Drop a comment with your time zone 04 56 PM +07 who's channeling Viking grit today. Step into the bustling streets of ancient Rome where the clatter of chariots and the hum of ambition fill the air like dust after a parade. Your hair isn't just hair, it's a billboard shouting your status, loyalty, and maybe your next political move. In the Republic, a man's short tidy crop and clean-shaven face scream, "Discipline duty," and I'm Roman, deal with it. But as the Empire struts in, hairstyles get bolder, curlier, and downright propagandistic, turning heads into walking statues of power. From senators to empresses, every lock is a calculated statement in a city where appearances rule as fiercely as legions. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the Tiber's flow, and let's comb through Rome's hairy politics. Early Roman men kept it simple short hair, no fuss and nod to civic virtue. Long locks, too foreign, too soft. But emperors like Nero flipped the script, sporting lush curls or top knots that mimicked Greek philosophers, or gods screaming, "I'm cultured and divine." Women took it to another level. The Flavian Tower, a gravity-defying pile of curls, took hours, and slaves to sculpt, proving you had time and wealth to burn. Empresses debuted styles on coins, and elite women copied them to pledge allegiance or climb the social ladder. Slaves and soldiers cropped short, stripped of flair unity over ego. Rebels, though, grew wild hair to spit in Rome's face, while gladiators rocked dramatic cuts for arena swagger. Hair was power propaganda and sometimes defiance, shaping Rome's image one snip at a time. If you're vibing with this, drop a comment with where you're at for 57 PM +07, Saturday, June 20th, 2025. Who's styling with Rome? Picture yourself in feudal Japan where cherry blossoms drift like whispers and samurai stride with the weight of honour on their shoulders. Your gaze lands on the shonmage, the shaved crown and tight top knot that mark a warrior's soul. This isn't just a haircut, it's a vow, a contract etched in scalp and strand binding samurai to Bushido's code of duty and discipline. In a world where every gesture carries meaning, hair is a language speaking of loyalty, status, and the razor's edge between life and death. Settle in, let a fan's hum echo the rustle of silk robes, and let's unravel the power of Japanese hairstyles. The shonmage started practical keeping helmets snug in battle, but grew into a symbol of samurai identity. Shaving it off meant disgrace, a symbolic death, sometimes a prelude to seppuku's final cut. Women too wore their hair like badges. Young girls sported twin buns or ponytails signalling youth, while married women pinned theirs into sleek coils adorned with jade or gold. In the Edo period court, ladies sculpted towering buns with phoenix pins, each style coding age, status or profession. Geishas dazzled with ornate arrangements to mark their craft. The Qing dynasty's queue, a forced braid, sparked fury among the Han, who saw it as betrayal. Taoist and Buddhist monks shaved bare, rejecting worldly ties. Hair was duty defiance, or devotion a story told in every knot and snip. Drop a comment with your time zone 04 57 PM +07 who's honouring Japan's strands today. Step into the vibrant heart of ancient Africa, where the sun carves shadows across the Sahel, and the air hums with the rhythm of life. Hair isn't just hair here, it's a language, a canvas, a map of identity etched in braids and coils. From Nubia's royal courts to Yoruba villages, hairstyles speak of status, spirit and defiance, crafted with a precision that rivals any sculptor's chisel. Cornrows weave stories, ochre-dyed locks signal rites of passage, and every twist holds meaning. In a world where community is everything, hair is both art and armour, a testament to resilience long before empires tried to silence it. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the desert breeze, and let's unravel the power of African hair. In Nubia, queens like Amanitora wore braided wigs that rivaled Egypt's their intricate patterns, shouting sovereignty. Yoruba and Igbo hairdressers revered like priest-shaped styles for brides, warriors, or initiates, each design a sacred code. Himba women in Namibia sculpted red ochre braids not just for beauty but to mark life's seasons, puberty, marriage, motherhood. Hair was practical too, shielding scalps from sun or sand, but its true strength was symbolic. During the slave trade, cornrows became secret maps hiding escape routes or memories of home, a quiet rebellion against erasure. Shaved heads mourned lost dreadlocks, channeled divine strength, every strand a story of survival. Colonialism tried to stamp it out, but African hair culture endured, passed through hands and hearts, now reclaimed in braids that echo across the globe. If you're feeling this, drop a comment with where you're at. 4:57 p.m. +07. Saturday, June 24, 2025, who's weaving Africa's legacy. Stroll through an ancient Greek agora, where marble gleams and philosophers trade barbs like swords. Your hair isn't just a feature. It's a performance declaring your virtue, intellect, or divine favour to gods and mortals alike. In Athens' heyday, men's tidy beards and women's coiled updos aren't mere fashion. They're civic badges aligning you with the city's ideals or the god's grandeur. Hair here is a mirror of the soul, polished as carefully as a statue in the Parthenon. From heroic locks to ritual braids, every strand tells a story of order, piety, or rebellion. Settle in, let a fan's hum echo the rustle of chitons, and let's comb through the power of Greek hairstyles. Early Greek men wore long flowing hair like Achilles' shining mane, a mark of heroic vitality. By the classical era, shorter cuts and full beards, think Socrates or Plato, signalled wisdom and reason, a clean forehead bearing the mind's clarity. Slaves stripped of such freedom were often shaved, their baldness a brand of submission. Women kept hair up and covered in public braided or coiled to show domestic virtue. Loose locks were for mourning, or wild Dionysian rites where unbound hair broke social chains. Girls offered their first braid to Artemis, marking the leap to womanhood. Goddesses set the standard. Athena's disciplined helmet-style locks screamed strategy. Aphrodite's flowing curls oozed sensuality. Hair was a bridge to the divine, a mortal's mimicry of immortal grace shaping Greece's ideals one snip at a time. Drop a comment with your time zone 04:57 p.m. +07 who's channeling Greek glory today. Step into ancient China, where the air hums with the rustle of silk and the weight of tradition, heavier than a scholar's inkstone. Your hair isn't just a feature, it's a sacred gift, a thread tying you to your ancestors through Confucian filial piety. To cut it carelessly is to snip at family honour, a sin as grave as cursing your parents' name. Men's top knots and women's coiled buns aren't mere styles. They're emblems of duty, order and loyalty to the empire's heartbeat. From Tang courts to village hearths, every strand carries a story of devotion or defiance. Dim the lights, let a fan's hum mimic the whisper of a bamboo grove, and let's unravel the moral weave of Chinese hair. Men wore their hair long tied into neat top knots or buns paired with robes that screamed scholar poet or loyal subject. Loose or unkempt hair, that's madness, mourning or rebellion, is scandal in a society obsessed with order. Women's styles shifted with life seasons, girls flaunted twin buns or ponytails, while married women pinned theirs into elegant coils adorned with jade pins or silk flowers. Tang dynasty court ladies took it to dizzying heights, their towering buns glittering with phoenix ornaments shouting wealth and status. The Qing's forced queue, a shaved front with a long braid, sparked fury among Han Chinese who saw it as cultural betrayal. Taoist and Buddhist monks shaved bare, rejecting worldly ties, their scalps a canvas of spiritual surrender. Hair was a contract with family, faith and empire binding you to duty with every comb. If you're caught in this weave, drop a comment with where you're at, or 4:58 p.m. +07, Saturday, June 21st, 2025, who's honouring China's strands. Picture yourself in ancient India, where temple bells clang and the air smells of jasmine and sandalwood. Hair isn't just a crown, it's a sacred script, weaving tales of devotion, caste and spiritual power. From the matted dreadlocks of wandering Sardus to the shaved scalps of pilgrims, every style is a ritual, a mark of where you stand with gods and society. In a land where spirituality shapes every breath, hair is both a surrender to the divine and a declaration of identity. Settle in, let a fan's hum echo the Ganges flow, and let's explore the sacred symbolism of Indian hair. Sadhus, holy men who ditch worldly life, let their hair grow into wild Jata dreadlocks that signal spiritual might